Greetings and welcome to another episode of 1320 Time Stream. I am Alaya Eternal, and we're going to be transmitting and receiving again together today data and breath and all the good things that are part of this sharing that we got going on here. So let's take a look at our daily energy, which is the White Galactic Dog, which will be the 8th day of the night wave spell and is the 4th day in the second corridor. Each corridor is 4 days. Well, actually, there's a tower and then a 3-day corridor, tower, 3-day corridor, tower, 3-day corridor, and a tower. So there's 4 towers, 3 corridors. If I were to be specific, that's how I would actually share it with you. So we're in the 3rd day, or the 4th day of the second section. There's just so many ways to, define it that it can be rather confusing. Which is why I usually pick kind of a generic theme and call it just the corridor of command. And so we're commanding our integrity today. That's the energy, is we're commanding our integrity. And how are we doing that? How does the night command its integrity? Through the dog. And so before we get too much further into that, let's get into our breath. Our breath is going to be coming outward through the left shoulder and the left big thumb. Big thumb. I guess you only got so many big and small thumbs, eh? For the left shoulder and the left thumb, let's breathe outward together now. Okay. A couple of nice small breaths there. Just get that energy moving. Okay, so, today is like the galactic family. Today is one of those days to really tune in to your galactic family. One of those days to tune in to the tribal nature of our planet Earth, because the planet Earth, as the galactic tone signifies, represents a field of harmony, a field of integration. Integrity and harmony are actually synonymous. We may think of integrity of following your word or not letting someone down, but that's actually not really integrity. Integrity itself essentially means to be integrated. And if you really think of the dynamic of what is the primary reference of integration in our existence, well, that's actually our biosphere. As the biosphere has a natural format of integration, and that which is integrated, kind of like, say an arm on your body or a tooth in your mouth or an eyeball in your eye socket, that's integrated. So it's in harmony with the whole system. And so that which is integrated is said to be in harmony because it's working as part of the whole. And you could say then there's a difference in that, which is say, well, that which is not integrated, that which is separate, is actually in disharmony from the whole. So it's kind of interesting because the dog aspect it gives us a chance to look at kind of how this function shows up and works in our communities, in our families, in our friend groups, in our larger pattern here on the earth. And kind of brings a bit of a definition of the difference between our civilizational or cultural expression of life and the natural format of life on the planet. And both of these have very different qualities. While our civilizational or cultural version exists as kind of like a over-exemplified individualistic behavior, which is not inherently bad. But where I'm going with this is as we continue to inherently separate ourselves off into hyper-individualistic behavior and patterning, we begin to lose our connection with the natural states and forms of things. And so the loss of that connection begins to create a hyper complexity in our own mind, because we start to build up complexes which attempt to supplant or kind of replace or hold space for or kind of fill in for. It's kind of like a surrogate structure to fill in for the natural, biological, symbiotic, harmonic networks of interface that we would naturally have in a tribal culture. That tribal culture being represented by beings who have a very close relationship with the earth, that their tribal families and groups are modeled by a code of conduct that is naturally represented through the behavior and cycle of the earth at large. Our cultural and civilizational aspects do not represent this almost in any way. You can see this very directly by the way that First Nations are attempting to reintegrate into the forefront of the reference points and the influencers and the great voices and energies and inspirers of our world, because they are part of our people that actually hold this in their DNA. They hold, and not just a very powerful message, but they hold the way, the code to synchronize ourselves and embody a sustainable biological way of life. Now, this isn't to say that civilization is inherently bad. This is actually why we have technology of the nature that we're seeing here. You see, the calendrical constants, even though you can't rightfully call this a calendar because that means debt-keeping book, this is a synchronometer. Because we're using synchronometry as our method of sustaining the biological or natural continuum. And because the sacred geometry that these so-called calendars or synchronometers are built from are actually the recognized natural cycles that take place in our body. They take place in the world around us. They take place in the cosmos. They take place in different animals and species and flora and fauna around the world. And we can get a little more into that, what those definitions are, in another episode, because that strays from the meaning of today, which is the galactic dog. And so while we're utilizing that kind of, let's just call it spiritual technology or conscious technology or awareness technology or crystal technology, then we sustain our connection to the natural biological rhythms, even though we may be in a technologically saturated atmosphere or an individualistically predominant mentality or program state. Is that we can, at the very least, and this is where we bridge up into the galactic, is that these calendars or counts or whatnot can be considered galactic counts. And it could be said that they were delivered to us by our galactic family or our galactic tribe. And so in many ways, the very nature of these systems and the integrity of them sustains galactic culture. And so again, the galactic tone with the dog, your galactic family. And so we have our biological family and our galactic family. And the thing that I find is the epicenter of the description here is that they are integrated. Their fundamental harmony, whether a higher dimensional state of consciousness, whether galactic, whether a lower earth-based state of consciousness. Now, to me, these definitions, higher and lower, they don't mean good or bad. They're just talking about density of vibration. Both are positive. Both are healthy. And neither of these are meant to be shied away from or overcome. That's just kind of a little pip in there. But both of these systems, the galactic systems and the earth-based systems, function from the same geometrical standards. And so that is the nature of harmony. Harmony, integrity, is an intergalactic field because it stretches out everywhere, because it's a vibrational constant, which you could say is a rhythm or essentially fifth dimensional. That all beings are connected through frequency, and this is no different. And this is another one of the aspects that is really showing itself today, is how we can harmonize and model those frequencies in our life. How can we connect further with the collective state of consciousness? How can we connect further with the tribal consciousness? How can we connect further with the earth consciousness? Because it is a natural fundamentality, so much so that it's not a fundamentality, a foundational mentalism. It is a biological constant. And so that biological constant inspires inorganic fundamentality. And so these are the kind of things that I see a lot of going on now in our lives when we take a look at people growing, wounds being healed, all this kind of stuff, is the way that we're showing up in that process and how we can accidentally make things more difficult for ourselves by going into old patterns that we've been trained by our culture and missing kind of like the call of the earth, the call of this family, the call of the tribe, and finding different ways to create connections with that so we can still go at our own pace. We don't have to feel forced with anything, but there's an invitation because the Mother Earth and the biological constant, it needs us. It really needs us to show up, and it really needs us to not just pay a visit, like a token visit. Oh, hey, how's it going? Bye, I'm leaving. It's like we're developing a connection with ourselves, with the biological constant. And so that's our own cultivation of sustainability with that biological constant, which becomes the evolution of our own existence as the earth. That we're not just people on the earth, we are the earth, and we're part of that biological constant. And I feel one of the epicenter of the dog energy is representing that tribal consciousness, which is the electromagnetic emotional field, which is portrayed in kind of mammals, because we have the four kind of aspects in the dream spell here. We have the serpent, we have the dog, we have the eagle, and the sun. And you have reptilian, mammalian, avian, and galactic consciousness. And so the mammalian aspect, which we are as people, we have a biological energy transmission system, which is the electromagnetic capacity of our shared emotions. Slightly different than telepathy, some would call it telepathy, which is our ability to communicate directly to each other as we become more self-organized, open, and in these networks of trust that are represented by being part of a community or tribe, that we begin to telepathize with each other, and this begins to, or more sustains, our allocation, relocation, synchronization, alignment, modeling with these dynamic biological geometries that are a part of who we are. So yeah, that feels like a good one for the wave spell. Stay tuned for the affirmation.